And now, let's welcome the brother of the bride, Michael Anderson, the successful CEO of Anderson Real Estate Group. The announcement boomed through the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton as my younger brother strutted onto the stage, basking in the applause. I sat quietly at my assigned table, the farthest one from the main party, sandwiched between distant relatives who couldn't remember my name. My champagne glass remained untouched as I watched our parents beam with pride at their golden child. My name is Elizabeth Anderson, and at 32, I was about to change everything my family thought they knew about success. Michael has always been our pride and joy, my mother's voice carried across the room as she took the microphone, tears gleaming in her eyes. Unlike some of our other endeavors, she paused, shooting a pointed look in my direction. Michael understood the value of following the family legacy. A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but most were too engrossed in their lobster thermometer to notice the jab. I maintained my composure, fingers tightening slightly around my phone, where an email marked K1FID CEO APPOINTNEN sat unopened. I'd like to toast my perfect son, my father said, raising his glass, who, unlike his sister, didn't waste time on foolish dreams of tech startups. He knew real estate was the only path to true success. More uncomfortable glances, more forced smiles. I took a small sip of champagne, letting its bitterness match my thoughts. 6 years ago, I left Anderson Real Estate Group to pursue my own path in tech. A waste of your business degree, my father had said. Playing with computers instead of building a real future, my mother had added. They'd made their disappointment clear at every family gathering since. What they didn't know was that my silly little tech startup had just been acquired by Silicon Valley's largest property technology company, PropTech Industries, for $2.8 billion. And tomorrow morning, I would be announced as their new CEO. PropTech Industries wasn't just any company. They were revolutionizing the real estate industry with artificial intelligence and blockchain technology. More importantly, they were Anderson Real Estate Group's biggest threat, though my family was too stubborn to admit it. Elizabeth, my Aunt Margaret's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Don't let them get to you, dear. Some people can't see success unless it looks exactly like their own. I smiled at her gratefully. Aunt Margaret had been my silent supporter through the years, the only one who'd bothered to understand what I was building. She'd even been an early investor, though we kept that quiet from the family. Thanks, Aunt Margaret. Don't worry, I'm fine. And I was. For the first time in years, I truly was. The wedding reception continued with its predictable pattern. More toasts to Michael's brilliance, more subtle digs at my life choices, more proud parental speeches about the Anderson legacy. I sat through it all, knowing that tomorrow would change everything. Oh, Elizabeth, you're still here. My mother's voice dripped with false concern as she stopped by my table. I thought you'd have left by now. Don't you usually have to work weekends at that computer thing of yours? I met her gaze steadily. Actually, Mom, I wanted to talk to you and Dad about something important. She waved her hand dismissively. Not now, dear. We're celebrating your brother's success. We don't need to hear about whatever small project you're working on. Mother. I started again, but she was already walking away, drawn to another group of guests eager to congratulate her on Michael's achievements. My phone buzzed. A text from James Chen, PropTech's outgoing CEO. Everything's set for tomorrow's announcement, ready to shake up the industry. I typed back a quick ready before slipping my phone back into my clutch. The weight of tomorrow's news felt both heavy and thrilling. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, my father cornered me by the dessert table. Your mother tells me you wanted to talk business, he said, his tone making it clear how little he expected from the conversation. Yes, Dad. I wanted to. Elizabeth, he cut me off. If this is about coming back to Anderson Real Estate, the answer is no. You made your choice when you left 6 years ago. Michael has proven himself worthy of the family business. He looked me up and down. You clearly had other priorities. I felt a familiar surge of anger, but kept my voice level. Actually, Dad, this isn't about coming back. This is about. Then there's nothing to discuss, he interrupted again. You know, your brother closed a $50 million deal last week. What have you achieved lately? Still playing with your little computer programs. The irony of his question almost made me laugh. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, You'll find out soon enough, Dad. He shook his head, that familiar look of disappointment clouding his features. That's what I thought. Nothing concrete, just more vague promises. When will you grow up, Elizabeth? When will you realize that you're wasting your potential on these tech fantasies? I watched him walk away, remembering all the times I'd let his words cut deep. But not tonight. Tonight, I knew something they didn't. As I gathered my things to leave, Michael approached, his new bride hanging on his arm. "Sis," he said, his voice carrying that same condescending tone he perfected over the years. "Thanks for coming. Though you might want to dress more appropriately next time. This isn't one of your casual tech meetups." I looked down at my Chanel suit, which cost more than his bride's wedding dress, and smiled. "Congratulations, Michael. I'm sure you'll do great things at Anderson Real Estate." "Of course I will," he smirked. "Unlike some people, I understand the importance of tradition. Real estate isn't about fancy computers and internet things. It's about handshakes and personal relationships." If only he knew how outdated that thinking was. How PropTech's AI-driven platforms were already handling more transactions in a day than Anderson Real Estate managed in a month. But he'd learn soon enough. As I waited for the valet to bring my Tesla, I overheard my mother talking to her friends. Such a shame about Elizabeth. We had such high hopes for her. But I suppose every family has its disappointment. I slid into my car, the leather seats cool against my skin. Opening my phone, I finally clicked on that confidential email, reviewing the press release one last time. PropTech Industries announces new CEO. Elizabeth Anderson to leave $50 billion tech giant. Silicon Valley's largest property technology company names former founder and tech prodigy as new chief executive. Tomorrow morning, this would get every major news outlet. Tomorrow morning, the family that had dismissed me as a disappointment would realize just how wrong they'd been. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about vindication. About proving that success doesn't have to follow a predetermined path. That innovation matters more than tradition. As I drove home through the quiet streets of San Francisco, I thought about the journey that had led me here. The sleepless nights coding our first prototype. The countless investor meetings. The tears and doubts and moments of despair when my family's words seemed to ring true. But I persevered. Built something revolutionary. Something that was changing the very industry my family thought they understood so well. My phone buzzed again. "Aunt Margaret, you okay, sweetheart?" They were particularly harsh tonight. I smiled, typing back, "Never better. Watch the news tomorrow." "Can't wait," she replied, adding a winking emoji. Back in my penthouse apartment, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine. The city lights twinkled beyond my floor-to-ceiling windows. A view I'd earned through my own hard work, not family connections. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel every dismissive word, every condescending glance, every moment of doubt they planted in my mind. Because tomorrow, those words would lose their power forever. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. "Here's to disappointing expectations," I whispered. The next morning, I woke early, dressed in my favorite power suit, and headed to PropTech's headquarters. The press release would go live at 9 a.m. sharp. At 8:59, I opened my family's group chat, silent for so long, and typed, "Turn on CNBC, you might find it interesting." Then I walked into my new office, the CEO's office, and waited for the world to shift on its axis. The next few hours would prove interesting indeed. The reaction was immediate and explosive. My phone buzzed nonstop as the news broke across every major financial network. Breaking: PropTech Industries names Elizabeth Anderson as CEO. Tech prodigy takes helm at $50 billion PropTech giant. Anderson sign disrupts real estate industry with historic CEO appointment. The first call, predictably, came from Michael. "What the hell, Elizabeth?" he sputtered, his voice sharp with disbelief. "PropTech? Are you trying to destroy our family?" I leaned back in my leather chair, enjoying the panoramic view of San Francisco Bay from my new office. "Good morning to you too, Michael. Enjoying your honeymoon?" "Cut the crap," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done? PropTech is our biggest competitor. They're trying to put companies like ours out of business with their fancy algorithms and digital nonsense." "Actually," I replied calmly, "I know exactly what I'm doing. Perhaps if you paid attention to my digital nonsense over the years, you'd understand where the industry is heading." "Dad's furious," he warned. "He's calling an emergency board meeting right now." I smiled, checking my watch. He might want to wait until after the markets open. As if on cue, my other phone lit up with a notification. PropTech's stock had jumped 12% on the announcement. Meanwhile, Anderson Real Estate Group's shares were already down 8% in pre-market trading. The next call was from my mother. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing it would be some mixture of guilt, manipulation, and thinly veiled threats about family loyalty. Instead, I opened my laptop to send a company-wide email to PropTech's 5,000 employees. But before I could start typing, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Anderson, your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insistent." I took a deep breath. "Send him in, Sarah." The door burst open seconds later, my father's face red with anger. He stopped short when he saw me behind the massive desk, the PropTech logo glowing on the wall behind me. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving his phone with the news headlines. "Good morning, Dad. Please have a seat." "I will not have a seat. Do you have any idea what you've done to our family name, to our business?" I met his gaze steadily. "I've built something revolutionary. Something that's changing the industry for the better. Isn't that what you always wanted, for me to make an impact in real estate?" "Not like this," he exploded. "Not by joining the enemy. These tech companies, they're destroying everything we've built. They're replacing relationships with robots." "We're not replacing anything, Dad. We're evolving. PropTech's AI platform can analyze market trends across thousands of properties in seconds, predict pricing shifts before they happen, and match buyers with their perfect homes using data points human agents would never consider." "That's not real estate," he insisted. "Real estate is about handshakes and trust. Real estate is about helping people find homes," I cut in. "And we're doing it better, faster, and more accurately than ever before. Did you know our success rate for matching buyers with their eventual purchases is 94%? Traditional agencies average 35%. He sank into one of the visitor chairs, suddenly looking older than his 60 years. "Why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened? At Michael's wedding just yesterday, we were all too busy celebrating traditional success to even hear what I had to say." A flash of shame crossed his face, quickly replaced by defensiveness. "We only wanted what was best for you." "No," I said quietly. "You wanted what was best for the Anderson name. There's a difference." My phone buzzed again. The market was officially open and PropTech stock was soaring. Anderson Real Estate Group's shares had dropped further. Dad's phone rang. From his expression, I knew it was the board calling about the stock price. "You need to fix this," he said, standing up. "Come back to Anderson Real Estate. We'll create a tech division for you. Whatever you want." I shook my head. "That's not how this works, Dad. I'm not the daughter who needs your approval anymore. I'm the CEO of a $50 billion company that's revolutionizing the industry." "Then you leave me no choice," he said, his voice hard. "We'll fight this. Anderson Real Estate Group won't go down without a battle." As he reached the door, I called out, "Dad?" He turned. "Check your email in an hour. There's something you'll want to see." After he left, I finally sent that company-wide email outlining my vision for PropTech's future. Then I opened another document, one I'd been preparing for months. At exactly 10 a.m., PropTech issued another press release. PropTech Industries announces revolutionary partnership program for traditional real estate agencies. The program would allow established agencies to integrate PropTech's AI platform into their existing operations, combining the best of both worlds, human expertise and technological innovation. It would be offered to select partners first, with Anderson Real Estate Group given the first right of refusal. My phone buzzed again, Aunt Margaret this time. "You brilliant girl," she said when I answered. "I just watched your father storm into the office looking like he'd seen a ghost." Then I saw the partnership announcement. Masterful. I laughed. "I learned from the best, Aunt Margaret. Thank you for believing in me all these years." "Oh, honey, you made it easy. Now tell me, how long have you been planning this?" "The partnership program?" "Since before the acquisition. I knew traditional agencies would need a bridge to the future. They can either adapt or get left behind." "And the timing?" "Right after Michael's wedding." I smiled. Well, I might have waited until they'd all finished calling me a disappointment before showing them exactly what I've built. She chuckled. "Remind me never to underestimate you." "Oh, hold on. Your mother just walked in looking like she swallowed a lemon. I better go." Throughout the day, the messages continued pouring in. Old colleagues congratulating me. Industry leaders wanting to discuss partnerships. Journalists requesting interviews. Michael called twice more, his tone shifting from anger to grudging curiosity about the partnership program. My mother left 3 voicemails, each one progressively less hostile. By late afternoon, Anderson Real Estate Group's board had called an emergency session to discuss PropTech's partnership offer. I knew they'd accept, they had to. The market had spoken, with their stock down 15% and PropTech up 20%. As the sun began to set over San Francisco Bay, my assistant appeared in the doorway. "Miss Anderson, your father's here again." I nodded, closing my laptop. "Send him in." He entered more quietly this time, looking less like an angry titan of industry and more like a father trying to understand his daughter. "The board wants to accept the partnership," he said without preamble. I thought they might. "Did you plan all of this? The announcement after Michael's wedding? The partnership offer when our stock was most vulnerable?" I met his gaze. "I planned to succeed, Dad. Everything else was just timing." He sat down heavily. "I don't understand. If you could build all this, why didn't you do it within our company? Why go against your own family?" "Because you never would have let me do it my way. You wanted me to fit into the box you built, follow the path you laid out. But that's not who I am." He was quiet for a long moment. "The partnership program, it's quite brilliant actually," he admitted. "That's the idea. And you did all this, built all this, while we were calling you a disappointment." I felt the old hurt, but it no longer had power over me. Maybe that's why I built it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The partnership between PropTech and Anderson Real Estate Group made headlines across the industry. Our stock continued to soar, and traditional agencies worldwide clamored to join our partnership program. But the most interesting changes were happening within my own family. One morning, as I reviewed quarterly projections in my office, my assistant announced an unexpected visitor, my mother. She walked in hesitantly, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Gone was the usual air of superiority, replaced by something that almost looked like humility. "Elizabeth," she said, clutching her designer handbag like a shield, "you look very much at home here." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "What brings you here, Mom?" She sat down, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About what I said at Michael's wedding. About all the things I've said over the years." "Have you?" I kept my voice neutral, years of practice hiding the flutter of emotion in my chest. "I saw your interview in Ford's yesterday," she continued. "They called you a visionary, said you're revolutionizing an entire industry." She paused, swallowing hard. "They're right." I waited, letting the silence stretch between us. For once, I wanted her to do the work. "I didn't understand," she finally admitted. "I was so focused on preserving what we had, what we knew, that I couldn't see you were building something extraordinary." I'm sorry, Elizabeth." The words hung in the air between us. In 32 years, I'd never heard my mother apologize. Not once. "Do you know what hurt the most?" I asked quietly. It wasn't the criticism or the disappointment. It was that you never even tried to understand what I was building. Tears welled in her eyes. "I know. I've been watching the videos on PropTech's website, the AI platform, the predictive analytics. It's incredible. And I had no idea my own daughter was capable of all this." "I was always capable, Mom. You just couldn't see past your own expectations." She nodded, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Your father, he's been different since the partnership started. He talks about you constantly, shows everyone the PropTech interface, brags about how his daughter is changing the industry." I couldn't help but smile. The partnership had been running for 3 weeks, and Anderson Real Estate's numbers were already up 40%. Dad had become PropTech's biggest champion, eagerly adopting every new feature we released. "And Michael?" I asked, curious about my brother's adaptation. Mom actually laughed. "Oh, he's trying so hard to understand it all. Calls the tech support team 20 times a day. He even admitted at dinner last night that he was wrong about all that computer stuff." The thought of my arrogant brother humbling himself to learn from my company's support team was admittedly satisfying. "Elizabeth," Mom leaned forward, her voice serious. "I know we can't undo the past, but I'm hoping. Maybe we can build something new, something better." I thought about all the family dinners where I'd been dismissed, All the celebrations where my achievements were minimized, all the times I'd driven home fighting back tears. It won't be easy, I said finally. Trust takes time to rebuild. I know, but I'm willing to try if you are. Just then, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Anderson, the Goldman Sachs investors are here for the quarterly review. Mom stood up, straightening her shoulders. You have work to do, but maybe we could have dinner sometime. Just us? I nodded. I'd like that. As she reached the door, she turned back. I'm proud of you, Elizabeth. I should have said that a long time ago. After she left, I sat there for a moment, letting her words sink in. They were years late, but they still meant something. The next day, I received an unexpected email from Michael. The subject line read, I get it now. Sis, these past few weeks have been eye-opening. The PropTech system is incredible. Our closure rates have doubled, our client satisfaction is through the roof, and I finally understand what you've been trying to tell us all these years. I was wrong. We all were. You didn't abandon the family business. You revolutionized it. I know I've been a terrible brother. All those snide comments, the condescension, the way I lorded my position over you. I'm ashamed of how I acted. Would you be willing to grab coffee sometime? I'd like to learn more about what you've built, and maybe if I'm lucky, start being the kind of brother you deserved all along. Michael. I read the email twice, remembering the brother who used to defend me from playground bullies before success and family expectations turned him into someone else. Maybe he was still in there somewhere. That evening, Aunt Margaret came by my office. Well, she said, settling into her favorite spot on my office couch. I hear there's been quite a shift in the family dynamics. I poured us both a glass of wine. Mom came to apologize. Michael sent an email. Dad's become PropTech's biggest cheerleader. It's strange. Strange good or strange bad? Strange, hopeful, but also a little scary. What if it's all just because of the company's success? Aunt Margaret took a thoughtful sip of her wine. Does it matter? People change for all sorts of reasons. The important thing is whether that change is genuine. And how do I know if it is? Time, she said simply. Time and actions. Words are easy. Let's see what they do with them. She was right, of course. The real test would be in the weeks and months to come, when the initial shock of my success wore off. But something had shifted, not just in my family but in me. I no longer needed their approval or understanding. I'd proven myself beyond any doubt, and that knowledge gave me a freedom I never felt before. The next week, I had dinner with Mom. She asked questions about my work, really listening to the answers. She told me stories about her own early days in real estate, fears and insecurities she'd never shared before. Michael and I met for coffee, which turned into a 3-hour conversation about technology, innovation, and missed opportunities to be better siblings. He brought his laptop, eager to share how he was using PropTech's systems to transform his division. And Dad stopped by my office regularly, not to criticize or question, but to learn, to understand, to bridge the gap between his world and mine. They were trying. It wasn't perfect, and years of hurt didn't disappear overnight. But they were trying. One evening, as I worked late in my office, Dad appeared in my doorway. Got a minute? I nodded, and he sat down, looking thoughtfully at the city lights beyond my window. You know, he said quietly, I always thought I was protecting you, pushing you toward what I knew, what I understood. I never realized I was actually holding you back from something greater. You taught me a lot, Dad. Just, maybe not in the way you intended. He smiled. You taught us more. About innovation, about courage, about being strong enough to forge your own path. He paused. I'm sorry we took so long to learn those lessons. Looking at him in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not the intimidating father who had dismissed my dreams, but a man coming to terms with his own limitations and biases. Maybe that's what real success looks like, not just proving others wrong, but creating space for everyone to grow. 1 year later, I stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons, looking out at a sea of familiar faces. The occasion, PropTech's annual leadership conference, where we had just announced our latest innovation, a virtual reality platform set to revolutionize property viewings forever. But this wasn't just any corporate event. In the front row sat my family, all of them. Mom, Dad, Michael, and even Aunt Margaret, now PropTech's Director of Strategic Investment. A year ago, I began my voice steady and clear. I sat in a different ballroom, being called a disappointment. Quiet laughter rippled through the crowd. My journey had become something of a legend in the industry. Today, PropTech's partnership program includes over 200 traditional real estate agencies worldwide. We've increased property transaction speeds by 73%, improved match rates by 89%, and most importantly, helped countless families find their perfect homes. I caught my father's eye. He nodded, pride evident in his expression, not the conditional pride of before, but something deeper, more genuine. But success isn't just about numbers, I continued. It's about growth, about learning to see beyond our own limitations and prejudices, about being brave enough to forge new paths while respecting the wisdom of tradition. The changes in my family over the past year have been remarkable. Mom had become one of PropTech's most enthusiastic advocates, hosting workshops to help older realtors embrace our technology. Her transformation from skeptic to champion had even been featured in Business Weekly last month. Michael had thrown himself into learning every aspect of the PropTech system. His division now had the highest adoption rate of our new features, and he regularly provided valuable feedback for improvements. More importantly, he had become the supportive brother I had always wished for, defending me fiercely in industry circles and openly crediting me for his own evolution as a business leader. Dad had surprised everyone. After initially struggling with the partnership, he had an epiphany. During one of our regular coffee meetings, he admitted something unexpected. "You know," he said, stirring his cappuccino, "I always thought I was protecting her legacy by resisting change. But you actually saved it, made it stronger, made it ready for the future." Now, as I stood at the podium announcing PropTech's latest innovation, I could see the future unfolding before us. Not just for our company, but for our family. And so, I concluded, I'm excited to announce 2 new appointments to PropTech's board of directors. First, Michael Anderson, whose unique perspective on bridging traditional and digital real estate has been invaluable to our growth. Michael stood, accepting the applause with a warm smile and a wink in my direction. And second, James Anderson, whose 40 years of industry experience and newfound passion for innovation make him the perfect addition to our leadership team. Dad rose, looking both proud and humbled. The applause was thunderous. The industry loved a good redemption story, and ours was one for the books. Later that evening, as we celebrated in a private dining room, Aunt Margaret raised her glass. "To the Andersons," she said, who finally learned that success comes in many forms. Mom squeezed my hand under the table. "To Elizabeth," she added softly, "who never gave up on any of us, even when we gave up on her." The conversation flowed freely, Dad and Michael debating the potential of virtual reality in real estate, Mom sharing stories about her tech workshops, Aunt Margaret plotting our next strategic acquisition. It felt natural, comfortable, right. As I looked around the table, I remembered another family dinner just over a year ago, where I had been the outcast, the disappointment, the one who didn't fit. The contrast was startling. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Michael asked, sliding into the chair next to me. "Just thinking about how much has changed." He nodded. "You know what the best change is? Finally having a real relationship with my sister. I missed out on that for too long." "We all did," Dad added, joining our conversation. "But that's the past. Today we're building something new. Together." And we were. PropTech's success had opened doors, but it was our willingness to walk through them, to learn, to grow, to forgive, that had truly transformed our family. The next morning, I arrived early at my office to find a small package on my desk. Inside was a framed photo of me at age 7, sitting at our old family computer with a look of intense concentration. A note from Mom was attached. "You were always meant to change the world. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. Love, Mom." I placed the photo next to my industry awards, a reminder of where I had started and how far we had all come. My phone buzzed, a group message from Michael. "Family dinner at my place this Sunday. I'm testing the new VR platform to show off my cooking skills without actually having to cook." "Count me in," Dad replied, "but maybe have real food as backup." "No faith in technology, Dad." "I'm disappointed," Michael joked. "I've learned my lesson about underestimating technology," Dad responded. "And the people who create it." I smiled, typing my reply. I'll bring dessert, the real kind. Looking out at the San Francisco skyline, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Success was sweet, but having a family that finally understood and supported me, that was the real victory. Aunt Margaret appeared in my doorway. Ready for the board meeting? Your father's already there, rearranging everyone's seats for optimal virtual reality viewing. I laughed. Never thought I'd see the day. Never thought I'd see any of this, she said, gesturing around. But you made it happen. You changed everything. We changed everything, I corrected her. All of us. And that was the truth. My success hadn't just transformed my family, it had given us all a chance to become better versions of ourselves. The disappointment had become a catalyst, the rejection a foundation for something stronger. As I walked into the boardroom, greeted by my father's enthusiastic explanation of virtual property tours and my brother's good-natured tech jokes, I knew that this acceptance, this understanding, this growth, was the greatest innovation of all.